Hey, it's Harris again. This video is on the 10 steps to getting over depersonalization disorder. Okay, I go over these principles in my video program, my 10-hour video program, the Total Integration Method, which you can find on my website. So if you want to truly learn how to implement them and really change your life, to truly get over depersonalization, I recommend you check that program out and my free articles on my website. I'm going to be hitting these 10 steps very quickly, giving you a full overview of what it's like to recover from depersonalization disorder. The first few steps are kind of obvious, but they lay the foundation for the subsequent steps and make them easier and more realistic to implement. Okay, so all of these steps work synergistically together. This is what is called an integrative therapeutic approach to dealing with depersonalization. I don't just take the cognitive behavioral therapy stance. I don't just take the psychodynamic stance about processing your childhood. I integrate all kinds of different ideas, and that's how I got over depersonalization disorder. And that's how a lot of people that use my program get over the disorder as well. And you have to implement these things, and it takes some time, but you can do it. So let's go over the 10 steps to getting over depersonalization. 1. Abstain from substances that either trigger the disorder or make the disorder worse. Okay, for some people this is marijuana. I smoke marijuana. I no longer use marijuana. It can also be substances that actually temporarily make you feel better, like alcohol. You have to abstain from alcohol, as well as caffeine. At the very least, you need to moderate these substances to a very low level because your nervous system is very likely sensitive to them, and you don't respond to them the same way that other people do. So you have to abstain from substances. Same thing with hallucinogens, stimulants, all these kinds of things you need to get rid of. Also, high glycemic foods that spike your blood sugar levels aren't good. Okay, they're not good for your homeostasis. So you should abstain from substances that make the disorder worse. Step 2, practice relaxation daily. So, depersonalization disorder is a complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It's often interrelated with anxiety, meaning most people with depersonalization also suffer from anxiety. The reason that this is the case is because their sympathetic nervous system is overactivated. That's the fight or flight system, sympathetic nervous system, right? But you have another aspect of your autonomic nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. This is also called the rest and digest system, or the relaxation response. You actually have a relaxation response. I know a lot of people with anxiety probably go, really? I do? Yeah, you actually do. And you need to practice relaxation daily. You have to develop a relaxation routine and do it every day. And stick to it every day. Every single day, don't quit. Don't slack. Practice relaxation daily. Learn to self-soothe. Because in depersonalization, we tend to lack the ability to self-soothe. A lot of this comes from childhood issues. A lot of it comes from our current stress. A lot of it comes from the trigger, the panic attack that caused depersonalization for most people. So we have to learn to self-soothe. And when you practice relaxation daily, it will help you implement the other steps I'm going to talk about. And do this at least for 30 minutes. Especially in the beginning of the day, great time to do it. You can practice mindfulness meditation, affirmations, guided visualizations, ASMR. If you can get a massage or take a hot bath, practice positive relaxation mindset at the beginning of every day, at least 30 minutes. Okay. Step 3, understand your attachment style. This is something I've talked about in a ton of videos. Of course, I go over in depth in my program. You got to understand your attachment style. Now, disorganized attachment is really the root cause of depersonalization for the majority of people. Okay, disorganized attachment is when a child has to attach to a parent that appears frightening to the child. We're all born with something called an attachment behavioral system. It's too complicated for me to fully explain in the context of this short video, but essentially we are born to attach to a parent, and if the parent appears frightening, we look to the parent and we have a triggering of the fight or flight response along with the attachment behavioral system, which leads to a tendency to dissociate in the face of stress. And this is why people that smoke marijuana get depersonalization, is because they've got disorganized attachment. You got to understand that. Now, disorganized attachment is actually not an attachment style, it's a breakdown an attachment. So you likely have another attachment style combined, and a lot of times that's called anxious preoccupied attachment, where people amplify their distress because their parents were inconsistently attuned to them. This is all very complicated, and I'm going quite quickly through this because I want to get through all these steps. But so you've probably got a combination of disorganized attachment with anxiously preoccupied attachment. Okay, so this leads you to amplify your distress, to be anxiety prone, and then it also leads you to dissociate. So you have what? Both anxiety and disorganized attachment. When you understand this, you can integrate the ego states that happen from disorganized attachment. Because disorganized attachment is actually also the same thing that causes borderline personality disorder and dissociative identity disorder, where people actually have splits in their ego states. And in depersonalization, there's a little bit of that going on, and you can actually integrate those ego states. I talk about that in my program. Okay. 4, understand your family system. This is enormous. This is enormous. Okay. You need to understand your family system because yourself developed in the context of your family. Now, when I first got depersonalization for the first year, I thought all of this stuff was complete hocus pocus. That our family has anything to do with who we are today. But it's absolutely true that our family system, as well as our attachment style to our parents, plays a great deal in who we are today. And a lot of people with depersonalization had a narcissistic parent, or had a schizophrenic parent, or had a depressed parent, or had a problem with a substance abuse problem, or had an authoritarianly dogmatic parent, a parent that made them believe something. They had a parent with a problem, and this screws up the entire family system because now the entire family system is focused on the problem of the parent, not on serving the needs of the children. So the children become decelled, they tend to become parentified, meaning they parent the parent, and they focus on the parent's needs. So they're deselving, and this leads to depersonalization. When you understand this, you can break a lot of the negative habits. You can start focusing on your own emotional needs, because what's at the core? What splits the mind and the body in depersonalization? The emotional problems, which we dissociate from. We dissociate from difficult emotions. We push them out. When you understand the reason why you have a tendency to do this, you can break the pattern. So, okay, you need to understand your family system. 5, grounding exercises and bodily reconnection. It's very important every day to practice being grounded in your body. Okay, get reconnected with your body. There's so many ways to do this. I have, in my program, I've got something called total integration exercises, which is like advanced grounding techniques that are hyper grounding techniques. They get you extremely grounded. But you can do something just as simple as touching the surface of something, smelling something, rubbing your feet against things. A lot of times this has to do with mindfulness meditation, where you're just feeling yourself being present. Feel yourself sit in the chair, okay? And physical exercise is also really, really important in this. Physical exercise is great for your overall health, okay? It also enhances neurogenesis, because the whole point in overcoming depersonalization, one of the big processes is you're actually integrating parts of your brain, and one part of the brain that's really important is the hippocampus. And when you actually exercise, this can actually generate new neurons in the brain. So exercise is important in so many ways, but it also gets you connected with your body. Okay, so you got to get grounded in your body, because when we're talking about depersonalization, we need to integrate the mind, the thoughts, with the emotions, with the body. What's important about emotions is they're grounded in a bodily substrate. That might sound like a nerdy term, but emotions are grounded in a bodily substrate. So one part of being grounded in your body is feeling your emotions in your body. And if you can write down, what do you feel? Let's say you're angry. Don't try to force yourself out of anger. Just, how does it feel in your body to be angry? How does it feel in your body to be sad, to be depressed, to be happy, to be excited? Note how that feels in your body. Along with doing grounding exercises, along with getting involved in a physical exercise routine. This is extremely important. Develop this habit daily, getting grounded in your body. 6 is trauma integration. Okay, I just dropped a great video on this. I talk a lot about this in my program, but see how this is number 6. This isn't number 1. Trauma integration requires that you must be in a relatively stable state of mind. Okay, you can't be having panic attacks, you can't be having a major depressive episode to integrate traumatic experiences. And there's two types of traumatic experiences. There is cumulative relational trauma in the context of your family. That's understanding the verbal abuse that you suffered, understanding your parents, and everything like that. And then there's capital T trauma, like understanding and processing, witnessing a terrible traumatic event like the loss of a loved one. And when it comes to trauma integration, there's two primary modes. There's putting words to feelings that you've never truly expressed, okay? You've never truly expressed these feelings. Okay, so you've got to actually put words to emotions that you've never thought about. And a lot of times we can recall terrible traumatic experiences, but we've dissociated from them. That's why this is so difficult to do. It's one of the most complicated things in overcoming depersonalization, but it's one of the most rewarding and effective at actually getting rid of the disorder. You have to integrate the trauma consciously. It means you need to bring it up. You actually need to recall it and put a word to a feeling that you've probably never put a word to. And this process of integrating your cognition or your verbal element of your brain with your emotional part of your brain and also feeling your body as you're doing this is so important in trauma integration. So trauma integration can be tough, it should be focused, you should not be dwelling on your past and ruminating all day long. It should be done in 1 to 2 hour focused session. You can do it in the context of a therapist or you can do it by writing, okay? And I have a lot of exercise in my program that's about writing. Okay, you can also talk to a confidant or someone that you know about this, a friend or a lover. Okay, that can also be extremely helpful in processing trauma. So trauma integration is number 6. 7 is emotional expression. So in depersonalization, people suppress their emotions. People suppress their emotions. In fact, they might have trouble feeling emotions at all. You have to engage in emotional expression. And this kind of segues from trauma integration. Emotional expression is so key because we are literally suppressing our emotions in depersonalization. And the mind-body split is caused by the emotional dissociation. So when you start expressing your emotions daily, if someone's being rude to you and you can assertively tell them, hey, I don't like that, and you assert your boundary, you're emotionally expressing yourself. You don't get taken advantage of as much. And one big problem that people with depersonalization and compulsive disorders and people just with psychological problems in general have is they feel afraid of anger. They feel afraid of anger. So they withhold anger and they push it down. And then what happens is at certain key points, it blows up. So instead of doing that dysfunctional suppression and then explosion, just get in the process of expressing your emotions every day. Okay, you can do this through poetry, writing, music, talking to people. Okay, emotional expression is so important. It's also part of trauma integration. You're literally expressing your emotions. One exercise I have in my program is the as if letter, where you're writing a letter to someone as if you're going to send it to them, expressing what you would actually say to them, but you don't send it. Okay, it's a very great way of engaging in emotional expression and trauma integration. 8. Develop healthy relationships and break free from traumatic isolation. So depersonalization is a trauma-based dissociative disorder. And what happens when we're traumatized? Well, we tend to socially withdraw. Okay, there's a big social element to being traumatized. That's traumatic isolation. And you have to break out of that. You might feel like you're a bit of an imposter. With depersonalization, all the childhood issues that come along with it, a lot of people feel shame and guilt kind of at their core. They feel kind of worthless. Okay, and there's a lot of social anxiety that also goes along. So you really have to crush worthlessness and guilt, and this is a big topic, and this takes some time. And you also have to get rid of the cognitive distortions such as mind reading and all the social anxiety cognitive distortions where you think everyone is criticizing you, and something called the spotlight effect where you think everyone's focusing on you when they really aren't. And you've got to get over that, and you've got to be willing to risk rejection and open up to people and really develop authentic relationships as one whole person to another whole person in a healthy way. This is so important in getting over depersonalization because depersonalization in a lot of ways is caused by relational trauma from the past. And when you have a therapeutic, reparative relationship with someone that you really can express your feelings with back and forth, it's so therapeutic, it's so healthy, okay? It can really restore you and help you gain a sense of self to other. Because if you think about the human brain and the human self, we're meant to relate to people. We're not meant to exist in isolation. That's why traumatic isolation is so terrible for people with depersonalization, because your self is literally meant to interact with other people. You got to open up. You got to break out of the shell of traumatic isolation. And this goes along with getting rejected some of the time, okay? You really have to do it. You got to be brave. You got to break social anxiety. You've got to break out of the introversion and introspection and really start forming relationships with people, okay? True confidants, find mentors, a lover, etc. Absolutely critical. 9, break the OCD loop. Okay. Depersonalization involves a huge component of obsessive thoughts. In fact, it's very interrelated with primarily obsessive OCD, where there's usually no external compulsions, but internal mental rituals. Okay, there's things like hyper-awareness OCD. A lot of people might suffer from self-harm OCD, where they're afraid they're going to hurt themselves. And a big component is existential thoughts that pop into your head. And also, people ruminate obsessively about the symptoms themselves. And this is when people say you should forget about it and it goes away, or you should distract yourself. Now, I generally agree with the intent and the sentiment of this very often touted statement. But you do it through acceptance and mindfulness, meaning when you have a thought that's intrusive, should you try to suppress it? No. Thought suppression generally leads to an increase in those thoughts. What you should do is actually accept the thought as it is, non-judgmentally. You accept it as the content of your mind. They call this in acceptance commitment therapy cognitive diffusion, where you don't identify with the thought, but you see it as the content of your mind and you accept it with a stance of non-judgmentality. And mindfulness meditation, if you practice daily, can help you do this with these intrusive, obsessive thoughts about the very symptoms themselves. And this keeps the disorder going. This is a very tenacious cognitive element. And by incorporating these acceptance principles and mindfulness principles, you can really help get rid of that. 10. Re-own your reality and live a fulfilling life of your making. And this is, you know, most self-help, honestly, is about this topic. You need to have big goals in life. You really need to have something that you wake up in the morning for and that you live for. So dream big. Really live a passionate life and live a life that you're making. Don't live a life in rebellion of your parents. Don't live a life just because that's what your parents wanted you to do, but live a life that you truly sat down and thought, damn, this is what I want. This is the direction I want to go in my life. And something that can totally consume your mental energy in the moment, get you into a flow state where the challenge matches your ability and you are constantly growing and you are self-actualizing. You have to take responsibility for your life. So when I talk about all the past issues, that's not to get stuck in the past. It's not to get stuck in the past. It's to break the chains and the bonds of the past and the negative habits that we get caught in. It's to break that and to move on with your life, to be a truly empowered, independent adult that creates your own reality, owns it, and moves on with your life. This part is so key. You have to be optimistic. You have a clear vision. You have to have clear action steps. You have to know. You have to expect failure, you have to expect setbacks, and you have to be willing to rise to the challenge and go through all that and to succeed. Okay? And you really have to care about yourself and focus truly on your emotional needs and truly what you want to do with your life. So those are the 10 steps to getting over depersonalization. Very generally, I'll just go over them again. 1, abstain from substances. 2, practice relaxation daily. 3, understand your attachment style. 4, understand your family system. 5, grounding exercises and practice bodily reconnection every day. 6, trauma integration. 7, emotional expression. 8, develop healthy relationships and break free from traumatic isolation. 9, break the OCD loop. And 10, re-own your reality and live a fulfilling life of your making. Okay, so if you really want to implement all of these strategies, check out my program, The Total Integration Method, where I show you how to actually crush depersonalization disorder. Totally and fully, I address every element of depersonalization. Also check out a lot of my free videos, and I'll post links to videos that reference these different 10 steps to getting over depersonalization. Thank you for watching, and best of luck in your recovery process from depersonalization disorder.